On this episode of the DTVC podcast, Sean Malloy from I Must Break This Podcast is back, and we are looking at some more Jean-Claude Van Damme. We're looking at Assassination Games, which also has Scott Adkins. It's the first of three Ernie Barbarash films that we'll be talking about, so stay tuned for that. And then next week, Ty from Columbus is on for his monthly spot. We're going to be looking at two Trap House movies. We'll be looking at the new one on Netflix that has Bautista, and then one on Tubi, a Tubi original as well. So that will be next week. And then in 2 weeks' time, Mitch from the Video Vacuum is back, and we're going to be looking at Champagne and Bullets. So that'll be a fun one as well. Now, Mitch and I, we haven't recorded, the next spot that he's going to be on. We haven't scheduled that one yet, but we're talking about maybe doing some Neil Breen. So it's like with Mitch, what's the next level down we can go? And he's talked about Neil Breen before. He's like, hey, maybe we should do so. I don't know if you feel up to it. I'm like, let's do it. Let's give it a try. So look for that in the coming months. Probably, probably not in June, but maybe in July when we get Mitch back on. That's what we'll be doing. But in 2 weeks' time, he'll be on for Champagne and Bullets. So keep an eye out for that. As far as DTVC Extra, next week I'll record the second part of the Indiana Jones DTVC Extra, so I'll be looking at Crystal Skulls and Dial of Destiny, so keep an eye out for that next week. And then, probably when we get into the month of June, I've watched all the Mortal Kombat movies recently, so we could probably do a good two-parter there, right? Do the first two, the 90s movies for the first part, and then the new 2020s ones for the second part. So, so keep an eye out for that. Probably June and July, those will be the DTVC extras. So, maybe that's what it'll be. Is once a month we'll do a DTVC extra. So we'll kind of see how that goes from there. Yeah, and then in terms of the site, last week we looked at the Mark Redemption. So anyways, it was Gary Daniels' birthday. We don't have a lot of Gary Daniels movies left, so I thought I'd do another one of the Christian movies that he did. So there's a period in the 2010s, in the early 2010s, when he was in Thailand, and he did like Lazarus Papers, which is kind of a Christian movie, and then he did two Christian movies, or three. He did two Mark movies, which are like based off The Rapture, and then a movie called The Encounter, Paradise Lost or something, where I think Jesus finds a bunch of people stranded on an island and talks to them or something. I haven't seen the movie yet, but that'll be it's one we have left. And there's another one he did called A Stranger in Paradise, which I've had trouble tracking down. Well, that was another one in Thailand. And then he also did, I think it's called Zero Tolerance, aka Angels. That was one he did with Wick Chaos. So it was like he made it once and then he reshot some of it with Scott Adkins. So the one that I reviewed is the one he reshot with Scott Adkins. So anyway, so I've got a few more of those Thai. I got a couple more, I guess, that he did in Thailand at that time, but he has a new one coming out. I think it's called like Lion's Den or Lion's Fist or something like that. So at least we've got some new Gary Daniels coming out. But at some point I'm going to have to do that last religious movie. And I will say, when I was reviewing, when I was watching the Mark Redemption, I was sort of questioning my life choices. Like, man, is it really worth it to get all of Gary Daniels movies up? But when you could post the social media and be like, this is my 61st Gary Daniels movie on the site. It is. I don't guess it's a source of pride. I'm not sure, but anyway, so that was our recent episode, our recent blog post. This week we're going to do Tin Soldiers. So that was one that Ty and I covered on the podcast a little while back. Jamie Foxx, Robert De Niro, and then Scott Eastwood, who we have dubbed Scott Eastcrud because of some of the movies that he does. So so that'll be next week's blog post. So keep an eye out for that as well. And then my guesting on other podcasts. So this week I was on the Lambcast to talk about Mortal Kombat 2. I believe that episode is already up, so you can check that out. And I was on a couple weeks ago to talk about Refreshing Remake. So I've made a couple spots on the Lambcast. Actually, I'll be hosting the Mandalorian episode, so that'll be in 2 weeks' time. I'll be recording that. I'm not sure when Richard will put that one up, but essentially the Sunday after it's released, I'll be recording that one. But for right now, Mortal Kombat 2, the Lambcast episode is up, so you can check that out. And then also, I recorded with the guys from Comeuppance. It had been a little while because they had some microphone issues, but I was able to record with them, and we kind of did an episode on Stallone, sort of like favorites, not so favorites, moments that we love, all that kind of stuff. The problem was my internet cut out towards the end of the episode, and so we were recording on Riverside, and I don't know if it was like a bad cookie or something, but when I tried to reconnect. It wouldn't let me reconnect, even though my internet was back on. It had recovered, but they just kind of finished the episode without me, and they kind of did my plugs for me and all of that. So but otherwise, until we got to that point when I got cut off, it was a great episode. I think it's still a great episode. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. They should be posting that one probably in the near future. Yeah, look for that one as well. And then also, Mortal Kombat 2, I got to mention that the guys at Bulletproof have done Mortal Kombat 2 as well, so you can see what they thought about it. They've got it up on both your podcatchers, whatever podcatcher you listen to, but also it's on their YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out. They did a great job talking about that one. So I was kind of curious because Chris had seen it before me because he got to see a screener of it, and he was he didn't tell me about it, but he just mentioned he'd seen it. So then I was like, when I finally saw it, I kind of was going back and forth with him a little bit about things I liked, things I didn't like, but they do a great job covering that one, and of course giving it the bulletproof treatment, as I say. And actually, they tease that next week's episode for them is Street Night. So that's a classic. Is classic the right word for that one? But it's a fun Speakman movie to talk about. So I can't wait to hear what they have to say about that one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I needed to cover here, except for the fact that I have a new novel out, Mark in Sales. So you can check that out on Kindle Unlimited, and paperback from Amazon. If you're looking for something a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit an easier read, Nadia and Aiden, the book that came out the year before, that's a smaller one. But I was listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about how reading, especially reading a paperback book, it does a really good job of sort of resetting your attention span if you've sort of lost it due to using your phone. And I know for me, I have that issue. And I've tried to get away from doing it, but, obviously I'm checking stats and things for, or like interactions and things like that for the site. So it's like I can't fully just like put my phone down and not, for an extended period of time. But reading is one thing that helps, and I've been finding that myself. Like when I ride the subway, if I can get some reading in, it's better than using my phone on the subway. So I've got 6 novels that you can pick from, and they're going to help reset your brain. So I'm doing God's work for you. I'm doing yeoman's work, getting your attention span back. So just pop onto Amazon, follow the link in the podcast description to my author's page, and then go from there to Amazon. Pick out one of my books, buy them, and reset your attention span. Take your attention span back from your phone through my novels. It'll be a great way to help you with that. But anyway, so what I'll do here is we'll have John playing our theme song. If you want, you can pause the podcast, go pick up one of my novels, and then when you come back, John will play in the theme song. And then after that, Sean Malloy from I Must Break This Podcast is on, and we will be talking about Assassination Games. Hey everyone, welcome back to the DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined once again by a very special guest. We've got Sean Malloy from I Must Break This Podcast back on. Welcome back, Sean.
Back again. Thanks for the invite. This is a lot of fun. I just, can I say I'm just honored for the fact that you have chosen me whenever it comes time to discuss a Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle. You always seem to call me up to bat, so I really do appreciate that. I get to kind of live vicariously through you and your podcast by chatting these films, so thank you.
Yes, no, thank you as well, because people have been enjoying this series. So I think it's just been fun that we've been kind of making our way through these. And I think, I don't want to say we took a break, but we kind of, last time you were on, you were watching We Die Young, and I thought, okay, this is perfect because I've been meaning to see that one. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that you were watching it? But our original plan was to do the first of the 3 Ernie Barbarash films that Van Damme did, Assassination Games. So that's where we're here now, and I think the plan is to, for us to eventually do all 3 of them. But It's interesting with these Barbarash movies because I think as a director and a filmmaker, he has a pretty high floor for direct-to-video movies, but there's also some things with this movie that are kind of interesting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we should. I mean, that's something that we can just start with right now. I mean, if you look at it, and again, I know I've kind of said this before, so I'll kind of truncate this opinion. But at the time when this came out, I remember being a little disappointed, you know what I mean, in kind of what was on display, which I'm sure we'll get into. You look at it, at this particular film compared to what we have nowadays, and it's like, man, like I've said this before, and I'm sorry, but there's the old saying, "Don't know what you got till it's gone," and I mean that. that really is apparent when you look at this film. It is of a low budget, yes, but I think the production values are really well done. Every actor in this film is delivering a really cool performance. You can tell that Ernie Barbarash and company had quite a few shooting days. I mean, they had to have more than the 10-day standard that we see nowadays with a lot of these films. I mean, it really does. It is kind of a bit of a diamond in the rough. That when I saw this back in 2011, I really did not give it the fairest of shakes that I probably should have. Looking at it now, it has some stuff going for it. Would I put it confidently in Van Damme's top 20? Probably not, but I certainly wouldn't put it in his bottom 20 either, by any means.
No, I totally agree, because I think, I was looking at my review of it and the comments people were making at the time, and the biggest issue was the fact that there's a lot of sort of character development in the middle and a lot of drama and not as much action in the middle. And nowadays, it's almost like... that you look at these other qualities of the film. Like you said, there's 2 shooting locations. They shot in Romania and Louisiana. I don't know how many movies do 2 shooting locations that far away. And also, to your point, it's like we probably don't care as much about the drama. It's almost like being able to watch these actors put in these unique performances is almost enough. And even that's something you don't always see nowadays.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that was one of the things that I thought, this is kind of going back a bit, but Dolph Lundgren and Scott Adkins did the film Castle Falls.
Yes.
Okay, and if you look at Castle Falls, Castle Falls is, that is a very scrappy, low-budget production. I mean, you look at Assassination Games from 2011, the film we're talking about, it is of a low budget as well. But then if you look at Castle Falls, the budget went even lower. But one of the things that I really appreciated about Castle Falls was the character development. You just simply do not get characters that have that much to work with in a 90-minute direct-to-video action film. You know what I mean? You just don't, especially nowadays. But to get this in 2011 was pretty cool. I mean, I will say what's interesting about it is while Jean-Claude does get top billing, he does feel in a lot of ways more as the secondary character, more as the supporting character. This is really Scott Adkins' movie because his character, I think, has arguably the most to work with, not just in terms of pathos and what's on screen, but also his character development and his overall character arc and everything. This is really his movie, I would say.
Yeah, I wonder if I wonder if they had Atkins attached first and Van Damme second, and then they maybe fleshed out Van Damme's character a little bit more, and when they realized they could get him on, and of course not only get him involved, but his kids, he had his kids' parts in the movie as well.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you went online, but supposedly some of the production of this one, and I do remember when this film was in production, hearing about it. It was originally going to star Steven Seagal alongside with Jean-Claude Van Damme. That it was, Hollywood had been trying to get them together for a film for years. There's the rumor that they were supposed to do Demolition Man together, but neither one wanted to play the villain. Right. So they tried to get them together for this particular film, which, say what you will about Seagal, I don't know, man. I think that could have been kind of cool. You know what I mean? But Seagal dropped out, and then I guess Vinnie Jones was apparently considered to replace Steven Seagal, but eventually the role went to Scott Adkins, which I think was the right decision. I mean, and I can only wonder, to be perfectly honest, when you hear a lot of that, I can only wonder if the Scott Adkins role, the character of Flint, if that was going to initially be Van Damme and Seagal was going to be the character of Brazil, okay, the character that Van Damme ended up playing. Because, I mean, if you think about it, again, it's a minimal, I mean, the character is more of a supporting character, and Van Damme really doesn't have as much to do as Scott Adkins. And so I can only wonder if when Scott Adkins came on board, if maybe they looked at it and they said, okay, wait a minute, this dude's still in his prime. He's very physical. He can do a lot. Jean-Claude, on the other hand, is kind of, slowing down in his, as he's getting a little bit older. We'll switch these roles around. And ultimately, I think it actually works to the film's benefit, that casting.
No, I totally agree, because I think you get two actors. I think the one that we've talked about before on here is that Van Damme is someone who always wanted to sort of step outside of what he was comfortable with when he would play these parts. And Atkins is also someone like that. Atkins likes to show, I don't know if show off is the right word, but he likes the opportunity to do different accents and do, he gets the opportunity to be in John Wick, and he says, yeah, put me in a fat suit and give me a German accent. That's the character I want to do. So he likes to stretch a little bit too. And Seagal doesn't do that, right? When you get Seagal, you're getting whatever ex-special forces thing that he is, the same character every time with names like Jonathan Cold and whatever. There's no variation, whereas these are two actors that like to stretch themselves when they do movies.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you look at a guy like Seagal, especially as the 2000s were approaching. It's he's wearing, he's fully clothed, wearing long sleeves all the time, and he is the best of the best. Yet magically, he gets to sit for the entire for the duration of the film. I mean, it's really ridiculous and quite comical. Whereas Jean-Claude, around this time, he was definitely. I mean, you and I have said it numerous times. I think when he hit the direct-to-video market, that really allowed him, while he was working with a quarter of the budgets of what he had been used to on films like Time Cop and Sudden Death. These films were really allowing him not so much to really exhibit his acting chops, but also play different characters. I will say with this particular film, though, what's really interesting is I did notice this on my initial viewing of this back in 2011, because what's wild about it, I think we've talked about it before, but there's the internet meme that I think has been going around called Sad Damn, where it seems like after In Hell or so, it seemed like that's all Jean-Claude was playing, was just kind of sad, burnt out, quiet, morose characters. And I remember seeing this in 2011, and here on the other side of Van Damme, you have Scott Adkins, he's really emoting. He's going after the guy who put his wife into a coma and everything. I mean, it's really his showcase. And then you have Jean-Claude, who, I don't want to say he's sleepwalking, but it was around this time where I remember thinking to myself, you know what? I think the days of, I mean, if you look at Jean-Claude when he was doing, I always like to use this analogy, but when he did films like Double Impact and Universal Soldier and Hard Target, okay, the films when he was in his prime, you look at him when he was on the talk shows, okay, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and when he did Arsenio Hall, look him up on YouTube, but he is just grinning ear to ear. He's extremely charming and, just completely affable and, a funny dude. And then you look at films like this one, Assassination Games, and I remember seeing it for the first time and just thinking to myself, like, that Van Damme that I used to know that I loved is gone. I think this is the type of Van Damme that we're going to be getting from here on out, sadly. Luckily, I think it actually kind of does work for the character to an extent, but, having said all that, I think this was kind of the for me at least, it was when I kind of hit that realization that, burnt out Van Damme is pretty much the speed he's going to be playing for the rest of his films.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he does have a few comedic moments in this. They're sort of dark comedic moments, but there's like that moment where Scott Adkins is questioning some guy, and then Van Damme kills him. And Scott Adkins is like, what are you doing? I was going to use him for, and he's like, well, why didn't you tell me you were going to do that? It was like, we're partners here or whatever. But it was like kind of almost like buddy cop moment in a way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's not without his charm, even when he is in kind of sad, morose mode, like we see, the kind of burnt out mode that we see. He still is charming, and he's still he still brings it. And and I would argue too. I think this is something else that we've talked about. But I mean, if you look at Jean-Claude around this time, and even nowadays, compared to when he was in his prime, when he was so much younger, I mean, you got to give Jean-Claude credit. The guy has never, to my knowledge at least, he's never really had any plastic surgery or Botox or anything like that. So the wrinkles in his face are real. And so you could argue and say that he's, by picking these roles and playing at this particular speed, that he is leaning into his appearance much more so. And I think that, works as well. I don't know if you'd agree with that either.
No, I totally agree there for sure. I think the one movie that he does in this time period, I mean, I guess Kill 'Em All, he's supposed to be playing somebody younger as well. But it's interesting because he does the third film that he does with Ernie Barbarash, Pound of Flesh. That character, I believe, was born in the 70s. Even though, of course, Van Damme was born in 1960. So I think that, and that might be, other than the Kill 'Em All movies, I think that's the last time he really does go back to being a younger character, because everything else after that, you look at it, you go, Kickboxer Vengeance, right? He's playing the sensei character. Blackwater, actually, Blackwater's an interesting one too, right? That one maybe he's playing younger. But, The Bouncer, We Die Young, Last Mercenary in France, Darkness of Man, these are all older characters. He's playing his age, to your point. He's leaning into it. And I think this is one of the earlier times. I should say, it seemed like he was even doing it before this, but he really, like, to your point, he wanted to be an older character here and have, Atkins' character be the younger character.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And and I will say too, I mean, I'm sure we were going to get to it, but I'll just get there now. The director of this one, I mean, for being in the field of direct to video, the guy is no slouch. Okay, Ernie Barbarash is his name. And what's interesting about this is, I remember when this was in production, I looked it up and I was like, what else has he done that I may have seen? And he did, I mean, I speak enough about this particular film, but he did the direct-to-video sequel to Stir of Echoes called Stir of Echoes 2 Homecoming with Rob Lowe. I don't know if you ever saw that one or not.
I haven't seen it, but I've been meaning to.
But it's actually really good. Yeah, no, it's actually, I mean, I was actually surprised. It was one of those ones, because I happen to love the original Stir of Echoes, and I remember when I saw the sequel came out with Rob Lowe, it was like, okay, I'll check this out. And it's very, considering the time it came out, it's actually hitting upon some kind of resonant, themes, considering, when it came out in 2007. So when I saw that he was going to be, that was the dude who's going to be directing this one, I thought, okay, well, that's kind of a step in the right direction. And what's interesting is, apparently he and Jean-Claude had a really good working relationship, because after this one, they teamed up again for Six Bullets, and then a few more years down the line, they did Pound of Flesh. And so, and again, none of these films are amazing, top-tier Van Damme films, but they all, at the end of the day, they're competently made. Okay, they're polished. They have a level of professionalism to them. So, I mean, I'm not going to go on the record and say that I think Ernie Barbarash is the absolute best director out there for these type of films, but I feel like when his name is on something, you know what I mean? It could be much worse. I mean, when I saw that he was doing Falcon Rising with Michael Jai White, okay, and I checked it out. That was worth it. He did another one with Scott Adkins called Abduction. Abduction is a sci-fi one, not amazing, but I mean, at the end of the day, it is still a serviceable film. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I think this film has some, decent talent working behind the scenes.
And I think that's a really great point too, because I think directors like Ernie Barbarash, I think there's a few other names you can think of like that, like Roel Rene, if I'm saying his name right. Obviously Isaac Florentine. Mm-hmm. Yep. They have a floor to their movies that even with the low budgets they can elevate them. And the interesting thing about Barbarash, and I think to your point too again about how we say these kinds of movies aren't made anymore. I mean, pretty much from 2019, he does in 2022 he does a movie called Heat Wave, but pretty much from 2019 on he's doing, or actually it looks like even after Abduction he's doing Christmas movies and other kind of Hallmark fare, but mostly Christmas movies, and that's kind of what's happened to a lot of directors in his wheelhouse. Mary Lambert, who I just reviewed one of her movies recently, Drag Strip Girl, who did, Mega Python versus Gatoroid, did the two Pet Sematary movies, a lot of music videos, like Madonna's music videos. She's doing Christmas movies now. Fred Olen Ray does Christmas movies. So that's the other part of it, right? Is that on the one hand, the budgets aren't there to make those movies, but on the other hand, the directors don't see the money in it either, and they're like, here, hire me out to make this Christmas movie in British Columbia for a week.
I mean, we're talking, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6 Christmas films that he's done for Hallmark or whatever. They're not films that I would ever watch. And I think, in the end, too, we can also be thankful that Jean-Claude is not stepping in. And he's not doing any of these films either, So.
Yes, no, I totally agree. It's funny. These are the kind of movies that there's a YouTuber I watch called Jay Harang who makes fun of these movies, and I think some of I was thinking like Christmas Under the Northern Lights might have been one that he did, which it's got. I was looking up. It's got Jill Wagner, who I don't know if you remember in the late 2000s. Mercury had that series of ads with a then young woman. She's I think the same age as us, but she was like kind of she was like their pitch person, Jill Wagner. And I guess she ended up being on the Blade TV show on TNT as well. But I guess Mercury doesn't need her to sell cars anymore. I guess because did they get McConaughey, or was that Lincoln? They got McConaughey. I mean, I know they're all Ford, but either way, she instead of they got McConaughey and Barbarash got her for his Christmas movie.
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, again, that's not those aren't films that are highly on my list, and they're not films that are made for me, nor are they ones that I'm going to be seeking out. But hey, I mean, it's steady work, and I think with a lot of these direct-to-video guys, I mean, I would say Isaac Florentine and John Hyams, I would say those guys kind of fit within the umbrella of being called auteurs because they all have a style that is very unique. But you mentioned Roll Renee, Ernie Barbarash. I think these particular guys are more or less guns for hire. You know what I mean? They're more or less mercenaries. They're hired because the production knows that they can get the job done, that they're reliable, and they can deliver a serviceable product. And having seen a good handful of Barbarash's films, I can confidently say, I think he does deliver competent products.
Yeah, which again In 2011, did we think we'd get to a point 15 years later where we're like, oh, that's like a mark of quality as a competent product?
No, yeah. I mean, it's talking about lowering our standards to the point of at the bottom to where we're saying, well, at the end of the day, it looks like a movie. I mean, who would have thought that would be the serviceable? It's kind of like the to be perfectly honest. It's kind of like the high school student that's saying, all I need to pass this class is a 59.5, and that's if my teacher rounds up the grade. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of where a lot of these direct-to-video films are kind of languishing, sadly, is in that with that thought process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, what I'll do a quick synopsis of this movie, and then we can break it down. There's not a lot in this movie, actually. It's not a very complicated plot, but essentially, Jean-Claude Van Damme is an assassin, and Scott Adkins was, I don't know if he was a former assassin or somebody who worked with Interpol, but either way, a crime boss who had almost killed Adkins before and assaulted his wife, who's played by Brie Van Damme, Jean-Claude Van Damme's daughter. So she's in a coma. And then this crime boss gets out of prison, and both Van Damme and Adkins get the job. But at the same time, Interpol agents want to take out Adkins because he has some of their dirty money. And so then it's a question of, well, can we hire Van Damme to kill Adkins? But then in a botched killing, Adkins kills the crime boss's brother. So now the crime boss wants to kill Van Damme as well. So I think I said Adkins. Van Damme kills the crime boss's brother. So essentially, the whole premise of the movie is a line that comes at the very beginning. I don't know if it's a Nietzsche line. I can't remember, but the quote is, the best way to defeat an enemy is to find another enemy. And so that's essentially what the movie's about, is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And everybody's, pairing up with enemies of other enemies to take each other down. So, but yeah, I mean, I think to your point, as I'm watching this again, I was like, I liked it a lot better in 2026 than I did in 2011.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, in 2011, us being fans of Jean Claude were kind of put off by the fact that he was once again playing so burnt out and morose. And also the fact that, I don't want to completely throw shade at the guy because he was approaching older age at that time. But he wasn't doing his signature moves, the jump spin kick and the splits and the things that we had known him for. For crying out loud, not to jump all the way to the end, but the big action sequence at the end is he uses a remote control machine gun to kind of take out the enemies. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, come on, like that felt like a bit of a cheat, but hey, compared to what is out there now, I think it was all pretty welcome. Can I just say real quick, because I don't know if you felt this way or not, but you were talking, how there's the old saying, "Enemy of my enemy is my friend," and wouldn't that have been a better title? I can think of at least a dozen other titles that would have been better than the putrid Assassination Games. Now, originally, this did have the title Weapon. It was just going to be called Weapon, which is a little generic and plain. They decided to go with a different title. But I think Enemy of My Enemy is a great one. Or even if they just titled it Enemies or something. But Assassination Games? What the hell does that mean? That seems like a political thriller or something like that.
Well, right, because it's not just that. It's like there aren't really games going on. This gives you the thing, right? Give you the feeling that this is going to be like, everybody's like doing their own assassination stuff with each other. When that's really not what that's not what happened. You get one moment of people where Van Damme and Atkins are both trying to hit the crime boss at the same time, and Atkins accidentally shoots the van that Van Damme's in, and Van Damme's crossbow with the poison-tipped arrow goes off and kills the wrong person. Other than that, there's really no like botched assassin. It's not like they're competing with. They end up teaming up pretty early on. So yeah, I think to your point, Enemy of My Enemy would have been a great title.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that if I could say, I don't think plays as well today. What's also interesting, I don't know if you remember this or not, but around 2009, 2010, there was a mini series that Jean-Claude did for a British television outlet that made it here to the States and aired briefly on Showtime called Behind Closed Doors. And it was a reality show that kind of was going behind the scenes and was showing Jean-Claude's family life and everything like that. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was really fascinating. I thought it was really interesting. But they did show him on set filming this particular film, and it was going by the title of Weapon. Yeah, if you can find those episodes, I think there might be clips on YouTube or whatever. But it was for being a reality show, and I'm not a fan of reality TV in the least, but that show was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I've never checked that one out. I'll have to check it out because especially now when you can go back and see the movies, like you can be like, oh, I've seen that movie that they're shooting there. That would be really cool.
Yeah. It was, they had him behind the scenes. They showed him doing this one and then doing a French comedy where he had a bit role that, to my knowledge, that film has not made its way and been available in the States. But yeah, no, it was always pretty cool seeing him on set of this one. And what's also really cool too is, I'm sure you've seen Scott Adkins, his YouTube series that he did during COVID called Art of Action. But if you know Scott Adkins, the guy has always been such a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme. He's always had the dude in such a high regard. You know what I mean? And so it is really kind of cool seeing Scott Adkins get to team up with his hero in a film. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a better version of that Chuck Norris movie Sidekicks, if you ever saw that one. But it kind of is in a lot of ways kind of hitting that. So, which, by the way, can we say rest in peace both Chuck Norris and Jonathan Brandis? Who would have thought that both of them would be gone?
I know, that's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. They're both no longer with us. We still got Joe Piscopo, I guess, right? He's still
Yes.
But to your point about Adkins, I think that's one of the things is he's closer to our age, and he grew up watching the same movies we did, and I think in that sense, there's a reverence there, but also when he makes these kinds of movies, he's not afraid of his character being the one to lose. And, granted, in this movie, he doesn't fight Van Damme's character necessarily. I think they have some fight scenes, but it's not like one of them prevails and one of them loses. But, I think of other movies like, Diablo that just came out recently, where he's okay if the other fighter is considered better in the movie, if that makes a better overall movie. And I think that probably part of it comes from the fact that, like, if he's working with Van Damme, he's like, fine, Van Damme, you can take the spotlight. Let it, or Dolph, right? When he's like doing Castle Falls, it's like, yeah, Dolph, go ahead, you be the star. I'm just happy to be working with you. And I think we end up with a better movie as a result, because I think of so many movies where the actors, they don't want to be the one to lose, and maybe there's like some kind of hacky thing that has to happen in the movie to make it so, like, maybe one of the characters drops out or they lose due to a technicality or something like that, so that one can't say they were defeated by the other. I mean, that goes all the way back, speaking of Chuck Norris, right? That goes all the way back to like Lone Wolf McQuade with him and David Carradine, where, David Carradine didn't want to lose to him, whatever. So I appreciate that about Atkins. Atkins cares more about the movie working than he cares about his own individual part in it, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one of the best things that you can say about Scott Adkins, even to this day, is, if you look at him in every film that he does, he delivers and gives 110%. Even the films where, if you look at a movie like Abduction, which I mentioned, which is also directed by Ernie Barbarash, not the finest moment from either Barbarash or Adkins. But you look at that film, and he is there, and I get the impression with Scott Adkins that he loves to work, and he feels just so fortunate that he has the ability to work and he gets to star in the movies that he watched growing up as a kid. So he takes these jobs extremely seriously. He did another one called Max Cloud, which is probably one of the worst action comedies I've seen in the last 10 years.
Yes.
But that one, he's there, he's delivering, he's there to play. I've actually watched interviews with him and seen him speak about it. He says, like, look, when he's on set, not only is he on his A game, but he actually, when he shows up, he expects everybody else to be on their A game and producing their best work. Because I think, especially of these films of a low budget nature, at the end of the day, it's his name and his face and image and brand that's selling the entire thing. So, I think in a lot of ways, while he is getting paid, he's doing quite well financially. But I think a lot of it so much is riding on him. So, yeah, he said, like, look, when I come on set, I'm fun and I like to work hard. But, he expects nothing but perfection and effort from everybody else on set, which I think is kind of cool. You know what I mean? When you hear about that, for a film that's being made for less than $5 million, for an actor to be on there who's just like, I don't care if the catering is making crappy food, they better be making the best crappy food they can, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, that's one of the things I think that makes his movies so great too, is that he, especially when he's working with stunt teams, I get the sense that energy, like the stunt teams see him getting after it like that, and they're like, yeah, I want to do my best work too. And so then you get these action sequences, whether it's movies like this, or like Isaac Florentine movies, or like, again, like Diablo that came out this past year that he's doing with Marco Zaror. When you get these stunt teams acting at this, performing at this kind of high level, you get these scenes that are just well above what the budget should be expecting. Because I think you get you get stunt people who are like, okay, if he's getting after it, if the star of the movie is getting after it, then we gotta get after it too, or really we can showcase our stuff. Maybe is a better way to think of it.
Mm-hmm. And I think to an extent, this particular film almost knows that to an extent, and they kind of have, there's like some kind of fun jokes in a weird way. I don't know, and I really picked it up on my most recent viewing. But there's the scene where Brazil and Flint first lock horns, if you remember. So it's before they team up or whatever. You always have this scene, and especially in these type of movies, but it's where they throw down, they fight, and then before they realize, oh, wait a minute, we have a common enemy, let's team up. But it's a really cool scene. So you have Scott Adkins, he has this piece, this weapon, this gun that has a laser sight on it and everything. I mean, it's just high tech and cool, and it's new. And then what does Van Damme have? But he has these old, like these old pistols or whatever. And then Scott Adkins gets a great line where he says, "Do those even still work? They look too old." And Van Damme says something along the lines of, only one way to find out. Let's try it. And you gotta wonder. I have to believe that was thrown in because they were kind of like, okay, we have the old action star from the '90s teaming up with this young guy, Scott Adkins, who's going to be the new face of the genre. You know what I mean? And so I think that end right there kind of works. It kind of reminds me of when Stallone and Jason Statham teamed up for the Expendables. You had the old action star from the 80s and the 90s teaming up with Statham, who had, kind of taken the lead of that particular genre. And so, I think it's always kind of cool when you have both guys squaring off, teaming up, but sharing the screen at the same time,
I totally agree. And I think the other thing, too, with Adkins is he seems to have great chemistry with whoever he's working with. So he has great chemistry with Van Damme, great chemistry with Dolph. We've seen him with Michael Jai White in a few movies. He does great with him, too. It seems to be another part of him that, Marcos Rourke, another name, again, that he's good at working with other people, which I think is another piece of this that, we just think of these actors as divas who just want to go do their own thing. And to have someone like an Adkins who's like willing to work with other people and kind of, again, like you said, with his YouTube channel, has a reverence for other people that are in the business with him, I think is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how cool was that YouTube channel when he was doing that? And you could just see everyone who he spoke to and interviewed. He just had a giant grin on his face, and you could tell that he was really relishing the moment of getting to speak with all those individuals. I never would have thought ever in my wildest years, though. I mean, it's really kind of interesting. I do kind of get, if we can kind of go off on a side tangent, but I do kind of get the vibe slightly that while he does have great chemistry with Jean-Claude on screen, I do kind of get the vibe that working with Jean-Claude maybe has not been the experience maybe that he envisioned or that he dreamed or that he hoped for, which is saying something considering, I mean, they, at this point when they did, well, I'm trying to think, they did this film, they did The Shepherd, they did Expendables 2, they did Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning, so they had done 4 movies together, and isn't it interesting that he was not able to get Jean-Claude on his show not once? I never would have thought that he would have been able to get Steven Seagal before Jean-Claude. You know what I mean? And Jean-Claude is a dude that he's worked with multiple times. So I don't know. I mean, look, maybe I'm reading more into that than need be, but it is interesting. It's kind of like, wow, like, what's the story there?
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I forgot that he had Seagal on that show, so that actually is a really great point because, between the two, I mean, granted, if Seagal knows going in that that the person's going to be like loving him the whole time, he's usually up for it. But yeah, you make a great point, and I mean, I don't think Adkins and Van Damme have worked together since either. Since their last collaboration together. So, which is crazy because, like you said, I mean, the two of them as villains in that Expendables 2 movie make the movie. It's just they're so fantastic together, and they're great here. I mean, the end of the movie when they're going to raid the villa where Adkins' wife is being held. You just can't wait for that scene to happen. It's just like you ready to see these two guys go in there and take care of business. And so, but to your point, it is, we think of a lot of the movies that Van Damme does. Not many of them have a co-star like Adkins. And I mean, when he did Blackwater, was it Blackwater, the one he did with Dolph? Is that what it's called?
Yes, Blackwater, yeah.
Yeah, when he did that one, they don't have that many scenes together either. They're, it's Dolph comes in at the end while he's like sitting in the lotus position in a cell, like meditating or something or reading, and then suddenly he's a part of the movie. It's almost like playing a video game and you unlock a new character. That's kind of what Dolph is in that movie. So that's one of the things that was disappointing about that movie was that there's barely any Dolph and Van Damme. So I wonder if maybe he's not easy to work with, and so that's why more of his movies he's kind of the main guy.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, the thing I will give this film credit for, I mean, with Blackwater was really unfortunate because, I mean, since 1992, as a fan of both Dolph and Jean-Claude, I had been wanting another team up movie where they were on the same side. You know what I mean? I always kind of envisioned like a Tango and Cash or a Showdown, a Little Tokyo type film where they were teaming up. And then it was just unfortunate that by the time we finally got one with it being Blackwater, not only was it coming to it, but if you look at Blackwater, it is very clear that Dolph's character in that film, his character's name is Marco, it's very clear that that character was kind of written in at the last minute because they realized that they had Dolph Lundgren available for a few days, and so they figured, hey, we'll write this character in to kind of service that. Because, I mean, if you take that character out of the film is still going to play, it's still going to work. I mean, I like his character, and don't get me wrong, because he's a lot of fun, but it doesn't work. Like you said, they only really team up for barely 2 minutes, and then Dolph just leaves the film. As opposed to this film here, Assassination Games, we were talking about how, it was originally going to be Van Damme and Seagal, or Van Damme and Vinnie Jones, and then eventually it became Van Damme and Scott Adkins. But I think in the end, this particular film, the script was intended to have 2 action stars in the lead sharing the screen. And that's one thing that I gotta give this film credit for, is that when it finally was when it was in production, and when it went before cameras and everything, it was still able to make that gimmick happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to your point about Blackwater, I was looking at the trivia on that one. The script was originally written as a vehicle for Nicolas Cage and Mickey Rourke, so there's no way that either of those 2 actors would have had the scant role that Dolph had. So I imagine it's exactly as you said. They found out that we can get Dolph for a short period. Why don't we cut the scenes down, give him fewer pages? They probably added characters. There were probably other actors that took those lines that would have been Mickey Rourke or Nicolas Cage's lines to make Dolph's part smaller, so he could just come in and do that. So, and it's one of those things where they get to put his name on the tin, but we as fans miss out on it, unfortunately. Which, again, Assassination Game isn't really that at all.
No, absolutely not. We, on when I did my podcast, we looked at so many films with Dolph, like, for example, the film Riot or whatever, where, I mean, there was a term, I think, in an article about 8-9 years ago, the term geezer teaser was coined, in which the poster is using the face and the name of this aging action star, when in reality they're going to have some young guy take the lead, and then the aging action star is going to be a side supporting character that's barely going to get 5-10 minutes of screen time. You look at a film like Riot, my God, you look at the poster for Riot, and it's Dolph's face taking up virtually an entire half of the DVD, when in reality he's not even really a supporting character. He's like, he's the and credit, if you will. Okay, Assassination Games, there's no lie involved in this one, Matt. Okay, you know what I mean? I guess if they wanted to be a little more truthful, they could say Scott Adkins is lead and then Van Damme is the supporting character. But you know what I mean? But in the end, it's not like Van Damme is a cameo either. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a team up buddy action picture, albeit on a low budget. But they're the producers of this one, Samuel Golden. They're not selling fans on a lie. So you know what I mean? So I got to give them credit for there. Then again, though, back in 2011, did I know that in less than 10 years, so many of these films would be complete hatchet jobs, and the term geezer teaser would even be a thing? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? So I wish, if only we could go back in time and shake ourselves in 2011 and just look at Matt and Sean from back in those times and say, guys, it's not that bad. Hold your beer, get ready. It's gonna get worse, but this is actually pretty good considering.
Well, right, because that geezer teaser concept that gets brought up in the documentary on Randall Emmett, Randall Scandal, because that's where he made his money. Was he started with Seagal geezer teasers, but then he moved on to people like Bruce Willis. And if you look at Bruce Willis's IMDb bio, it's not. He's kind of just dipping his toes into that geezer teaser water around this time. He does Setup in 2011. He does Fire with Fire. He does The Prince in 2014, which also has John Cusack and Jason Patric. But he's also still doing things like A Good Day to Die Hard or G.I. Joe Retaliation. And so, I think you were on when we talked about Precious Cargo, which would have been kind of knee deep in that geezer teaser phase, where, we didn't know at that time how sick Willis was and how much, essentially Randall Emmett was just making as many movies with him as he could, in part because I think Willis wanted the money for his family, but I think Emmett wanted to get as much out of him as possible too. Like I think you likened it to Bela Lugosi in Ed Wood's movies, right, where he's just sort of propping him up to get those movies in. We had no idea where that was going, and it was almost at the same time as this. So it's almost like this movie is almost like the end of an era, and a new era was starting at the same time that we just had no idea was coming.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it was interesting because I do remember when Bruce Willis when he did films like you mentioned, Set Up and The Prince or whatever, and I remember seeing that, and at the time I'd see those pop up on the Redbox, and I remember kind of justifying it, kind of like you, and I was like, well, he's still getting a few films in theaters. I mean, and he's collecting a little side gig or whatever. Has to be easy, but. It was around, for me at least, felt around 2016, 17 or whatever, when it was like 3-4 films a year suddenly were coming out. And you were kind of like, okay, what's going on here? You know what I mean? And, to give a guy like Jean-Claude credit, I don't know what's going on with him. I'm not going to speculate on his finances or anything like that. But, I mean, he doesn't work as much as he used to. We'll see him, like I said, he popped up for that film you and I discussed, which Darkness of Man, you know what I mean, which was kind of like his big return. I mean, and then Kill 'Em All 2, which was another one. But I mean, you don't see him pop up as much. And I gotta believe, if I could give my boy credit, I gotta believe that. Go with me on this one. Please don't laugh at me because I know listeners may laugh. But I gotta believe that a guy like Jean-Claude looks at the state of the market, looks at the way things are, looks at the films that Bruce Willis was churning out ad nauseum at the tail end of his career, and Van Damme kind of has a little bit of artistic integrity to an extent, and thinks to himself, you know what, I don't need to work that bad. You know what I mean? Because I think we can also agree too. Jean-Claude is a brand. You know what I mean? I mean, if he has his own website where he sells hats and he sells hoodies and everything like that with his initials, with his name on them, and I feel like he's kind of like, look, why would I want to soil my brand by embarrassing myself and showing up in these films that are just gonna turn away the fans that I have? You know what I mean? I think obviously he still has fans. You and I are fans and everything like that. But if he's just going to continue embarrassing himself and doing films that are clearly beneath him, well, then that's just going to cheapen the brand. You know what I mean? And so I have to believe that he looks at this and says, you know what, I'm okay being remembered for the hits, and I'm going to have a little bit of artistic integrity, and I'm going to bow out now for the time being. Having said that, I guess the paycheck for films like Darkness of Man and Kill 'Em All 2 must have been really, really good. But, you know what I mean? But I'd much rather him show up in something like that every few years and embarrass himself rather than doing 5-6 films a year like Bruce Willis did.
Well, and I wonder, too, if Kill 'Em All 2, part of the allure of that might have been the set locations that were so beautiful. If he was like, you know what, I'll make this sequel here. I'll kind of continue this character, and I get to be here for that. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast. The podcast is called "Well, There's Your Problem," where it's essentially engineers talk about engineering disasters, and but they were talking about one of the issues with capitalism is that the really rich people that everybody thinks are smart and know exactly what they're doing, they're always reluctant to spend a little money with the idea knowing that they could make more down the road. They just want to hoard as much as possible and cut as many corners as possible and have that kind of money. And I think Van Damme sees it more in that former way of like, well, yeah, maybe I can make a little extra now doing this or that movie. I could do all these movies that Seagal, for example, was doing and make a little extra money here or there. But he probably sees the diminishing returns on that you can only make so much from those movies, whereas his merch, his cameos, those kinds of things, they're always going to be able to make him money if he just maintains a certain level of status. And each movie that he makes that might pay him a good amount of money now, but could hurt that status, means he's going to lose money down the road potentially. And I think that's a smart move on his part, because to your point, his brand, he's never hit that point that like Seagal, where I do a similar series to this with Scott Murphy from All 90s Action, where we talk about Seagal movies. And if you've listened to any of those, the tone is completely different when we're talking about Seagal movies versus Van Damme movies. And I think that has to do with Van Damme sort of maintaining a certain status, that he wasn't he wasn't like, when you had Ben Sachs on your podcast, which I feel like it's like a bingo card. You have to check off that I mentioned your interview with Ben Sachs, but he talked about that law of diminishing returns, where Seagal kept coming to him and saying, I need another movie, and he's like, but the market's not going to keep buying your movies at the same rate if you keep making them like that. And it seems like Van Damme understood that in a way that maybe Seagal and other actors don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hate saying this, but I mean, there's a lot of, he is no longer on anybody's A-list, but for me, yeah, it was around. I mean, what's sad is he had a second coming, or a comeback, if you will, back in 2001 when he did Exit Wounds, where he was back in theaters and everything. But then he did a couple direct-to-video films, and then if you look at him around the mid-2000s, that's about when I think I gave up, and when a lot of fans gave up on him, because it was the same thing, the same character, the same action beats, the same shooting locations. He wasn't even coming back to do his own ADR, his own dubbing, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's not even really him fighting. It's not even really him, talking, for crying out loud. And so it was like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? But whereas, a guy like Jean-Claude, I mean, yeah, I mean, he was still putting in a certain amount of effort. I think we can agree. I think we can say, and so that was always always good to see, because I think and as fans, not just of these guys, but I think of any actor for that matter. You know what I mean? I think you want your favorite actor to at least care what they're doing on screen, and put forth at least a modicum of effort, I would think, right? And so yeah, and I think going back to this particular film, yeah, everybody is here. Everybody here on screen is delivering and is putting forth a solid performance.
Yeah, now one of the things that came up, I think, in both my review, I mentioned it, and some of the other ones I talked about, was that washed out digital effect that we get in a few scenes. I think the one where it's most stark to me is when they pick up the crime boss from prison, and it's almost all like sepia toned. I don't know. I felt like it was used in certain spots almost for artistic effect. I don't know overall, though. I think the movie overall, yes, it would have been nice to have a little bit more color in it, but I don't think overall it affected the movie. I'm not sure what your thoughts were on that.
So Matt, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because that was going to be a slight piece of contention with me as well. So yeah, now I don't have to really go there. That's one thing that I've never really dug about this film. I don't understand why Ernie Barbarash and the team decided on this particular color tone with the film, because that's one of the things that I think is very distracting about it. Yeah, it has a very kind of washed out sepia tone to it. Dolph did a film back in '96 called Hidden Assassin. It's also known as The Shooter. And that particular film had a similar look, where it almost kind of resembles. I mean, obviously this film was filmed in Eastern Europe for quite a few scenes. So when you're shooting overseas in countries like that, obviously you're going to get different lighting and things of that nature. So okay, I can roll with that to an extent, but yeah, it does. There are moments in this film where it does appear like a BBC production. You know what I mean? Or like an old episode of Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Who or something. It just kind of has a I don't want to use the term foreign look to it, because I feel like that sounds a little amateurish to say, but it doesn't have a very Hollywood look to it, if that makes sense. It does feel cheap, and it does feel, like I said, the best analogy I can use is it feels like one of those old like Sherlock Holmes episodes on BBC, or Mr. Bean. I don't know if you remember Mr. Bean, but
Yes.
Mr. Bean kind of had a very muted, washed out kind of look to it as well. This looks on the same level as that. And I don't think it really does the film many favors. I think if they had filmed this was also the kind of the beginning of when we started seeing digital, because if you remember around 2009 or so, that's when a lot of these direct-to-video films really started relying on digital. And so if you look at a lot of the films from about 2011, or excuse me, 2009 to about 2011 or so, they all had a very similar look. Dolph did a film that he actually directed as well, called Icarus. It's also referred to as the Killing Machine in some territories. That one also has a very cheap digital kind of grainy look to it as well. I don't know if you've seen that one, but
Yes.
very similar.
Yeah, definitely. Because I was going to say the one that he's most notorious for, it wasn't quite the same thing as that was Missionary Man, but that was mostly because that was an issue, I think, right, with the movie when they were kind of switching formats with the movie. It had that washed out look, which actually almost kind of gave it a dreamlike effect. But there are moments in this movie that looked like Missionary Man, I thought, which I don't know if this movie had the same excuse that Missionary Man had for it to look like that.
I don't know. I mean, they both, were distributed by Sony, so that could have something to do with it as well. Missionary Man was an interesting case because there are rumors, or that supposedly, I guess, Dolph wanted the film to be in black and white, and then through the post conversion or whatever, they decided, no, we're not going to do black and white, we're going to do color. But then they decided to kind of do that very washed out sepia look to that particular film as well. I don't know, but what's interesting about Missionary Man is if you look at that film, Dolph, he's bleached his hair an even brighter blonde. Mm-hmm. So I kind of have some theories about that. I don't know if you would agree or not, but the fact that his hair is so brightly, I mean, it's so blonde that if the film was black and white, his hair would have looked white, basically, on screen. And in the film, he's kind of playing this avenging angel of sorts. So I kind of wonder if that was intentional, where he wanted his character to look and feel angelic, like he was dropped straight from the heavens to enact vengeance or something. Maybe I'm looking into that way more, and obviously this isn't the Missionary Man episode, but it wouldn't put it past me with Dolph applying that kind of aesthetic to that film.
No, I totally agree. So the thing about Dolph, when it came to Dolph making his movies, I remember, speaking of the Killing Machine or Icarus, that was back when I would get movies on DVD from Netflix, or I would own it. I think I own a copy of Killing. I think I own everything that Dolph made up until, like, I don't know, something in, like, I think maybe after One in the Chamber. I think One in the Chamber might be the last one that I own of his. But I had that one, Killing Machine, and I remember watching the featurette where he was talking about directing. He was saying how they were directing it in Vancouver, but it was taking place in Los Angeles, and how there was a scene when the characters were outside, and it was so cold in Vancouver you could see everybody's breath. And he thought that was an issue. He wanted to fix that. So I think the fact that he put so much attention to making sure you couldn't see the character's breath when they were, because, I mean, I don't know, maybe I would have caught that, right? Maybe I would have been like, wow, they're in Los Angeles and it's so cold out you can see their breath. But it was something that was important enough for him that he made sure that they fixed that. So I could see him imagining, as he was blocking out Missionary Man, saying, I want my hair to be extra bleached white, so so it looks white in the black and white movie. I could definitely see him doing that.
Yeah. No, but I mean, with this particular film, yeah, like I said, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I mean, the scene where Jean-Claude meets up with his handler, the one gentleman that pays him and also gives him his assignments or whatever. You look at that scene in the warehouse. I mean, it's very clear, like, wow, this was filmed in, like, Prague or Bucharest or something like that, wasn't it? Like, this is not an American production with American cameras in the least. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because they kept showing the 300 bus going by wherever it was that Van Damme lived. So it showed his character driving a Mercedes. So I don't think he needed to take the 300 bus, but it was good to know it was there in case he needed it, if he needed to get around. I think it was in Bucharest where they shot that.
Yeah. I mean, and you can tell. I mean, like,
yeah. Now, I was trying to think, I mean, in terms of other stuff in the movie, I mean, I think the movie goes dark. I think that's the one thing. And, it's interesting because you look at something like Falcon Rising, where I think Barbarash goes a little bit dark there. That's the most recent other movie of Barbarash that I've seen. I mean, I've seen some of the other ones that we talked about here as well, but that's the most recent one that I've seen before this was Falcon Rising. And while that one does go a little bit dark at times as well, it doesn't quite go as dark as this one does. This one has its moments where you're just like, wow, they decided to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at Scott Adkins, his character Flint, the final kill that he gets on the big bad villainous boss, who's played by I've never seen him before, but he's played by an actor by the name of Ivan Kay. Yeah. But so this he's pretty much the head of the snake, if you will, that's kind of been controlling everything. This is the main bad guy that they need to take down, and he's also the one responsible for the condition that Atkins' wife is in the film. But the final kill that he gets is just vicious, where he's what is it? He's whispering in his ear. He pretty much has him to gunpoint, and he says, you need to apologize to my wife. Right. And so he's like, so this bad guy is this villain is crying, saying, he's given his apology and everything, and just how Scott Adkins just whispers in his ear and says, she can't hear you, and then he just stabs a knife into his back. Yeah. It's just like, whoa, yeah. This is dark. But I mean, on the other hand too, kind of like going with what we were saying at the beginning, how cool is that for in a Jean-Claude Van Damme film where he is top billed, it's Scott Adkins' character that is getting the final kill. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of cool. And I think that also kind of speaks to Van Damme's character, that he was also kind of allowing that to happen. I mean, if you look at Expendables 4, where Stallone is gone the entire film, basically, but then he comes back at the end. Spoiler, can we just say spoiler? But then he comes back at the end, and he gets the final kill. And it's just like, wow, like, that's some ego you got on yourself there, Sly. for Van Damme to kind of step aside, it was, I thought kind of cool. Yeah. Because, again, like we keep saying, this is Scott Adkins' movie. He's the character that is given more to do, has more character development. There's more nuance with his character than there is Van Damme's character as Brazil.
Yeah. Now speaking of the nuance with Van Damme's character, the one piece that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if you experienced this growing up, but I've talked to a few other people that have, where you rent movies from the video store as a kid, and you get the new Van Damme movie, and you may or may not get it's like erotic thrillers or something like that too, but it's the Van Damme movie that like my mom would walk in while he's doing like this like softcore porn love scene, and it was funny that in this movie his character is very awkward and unable to interact, not just with women but people in general. And there's the whole redemption of this through the sex worker kind of trope in this as well, where a person who's trafficked, a human trafficker is living next door, or sex trafficker is living next door, and the young woman that he's there has with him there, he's beating her, and Van Damme brings her into his apartment, and then she's kind of falling for him, and then she kisses him on the cheek while he's getting ready to go, and he just awkwardly tries to kiss her back, and I'm like, man, this is not the guy who is having a threesome in Inferno, right? It's a very different character here, and I kind of appreciated that too.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you bring up another really good point, Matt, because I mean, I've long said that there's nothing more unsettling than watching guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone kiss a woman. Right. You know what I mean? Like them doing love scenes never really worked. The Specialist is one of the most uncomfortable and awkwardly hilarious films ever. But having said that, I feel like Jean-Claude, in his prime, he was always one of those dudes that was always able to kind of pull it off. You know what I mean? Obviously, you showed up for a Van Damme film, to see him, kick ass and do the splits and everything like that. But if there was a love sequence or something like that, he was rare in that he was able to pull it off. But what's really kind of cool, I would say, about Jean-Claude in this later phase of his career is he didn't seem to have delusions like Seagal did. You know what I mean? You look at like Seagal, and he was still insisting on playing the best of the best and the top sniper and all of that. Whereas Jean-Claude was leaning more into his age in this later stage. So as a result, we never really saw him. He quit doing the love scenes. He quit doing the nude scenes. Do you remember that in his prime? We always got the butt shot. I mean, seriously, in every Van Damme movie in his prime, we always seem to have, he always showed his buns. You know what I mean? Because he was proud of them. And then it got to a certain point where he was kind of like, look, I'm an old guy now. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? And so we don't see that anymore. And so that's really kind of cool. To go off on a side tangent, but, I watched an old Clint Eastwood film about a week ago from 2002 that he did called Bloodwork. Have you seen Bloodwork? Do you remember that one?
I haven't. I've been actually, man. I don't know if I've ever seen the whole thing. I think it's been on TV a few times. It's one of those ones that used to be in the bargain bins for DVDs all the time. So I feel like I've encountered it, but I don't know if I've seen it. I can't remember if I have.
So it's not good. It's not one of it. But he has the audacity. I mean, like now. I mean, I hate to throw shade at poor Clint Eastwood. You know what I mean? But I mean, he's in his 90s now. But when that film came out, he was like in his early 70s or whatever. And there is like a love scene where he and this gal who's easily got to be at least 25 years younger than him, where they start making out or whatever. And it's just like, oh, come on. Like, he's in his 70s. He should be retired. In the movie, he has a heart attack, for God's sakes. Right. So it's like it doesn't work. I remember seeing that in the theaters and just being like, wow. Like Clint Eastwood really thought he could still go there at this age. God bless him. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, to kind of go back to this film. Sorry, I'm go on these tangents. But yeah, but for this film to make you think that it's going to go where he's going to have that love interest, and then we may get an unnecessary scene or whatever, for them to zig when you expect it to zag, I thought was pretty welcome and was pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. Now, it was a shock that they killed her off. I thought that was a little bit harsh for me, but it's as harsh as it was, I don't. Sometimes when movies do that just for the harshness, or and I don't know that this movie necessarily. I think it played within the story a bit. I think it would have been nice if she had survived, and I don't know if them living happily ever after, or if they just sort of like she pets the turtle and he practices his violin. Maybe that's happily ever after. And that mm-hmm. And that's not a metaphor for anything either. People, he had a turtle that she could pet, and the turtle liked it, and he also played his violin, as Van Damme did. So yeah, it wasn't a metaphor for anything about them having sex or anything.
That's probably the best way to describe Jean-Claude's character development in this film. Whereas Scott Adkins, we get told that he has a wife that's in a coma state. He's gunning for revenge. He's an Interpol agent and everything. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to his character. All we get to Van Damme is that he is a burnt-out contract killer who plays the violin that has a pet turtle. And I guess at the end of the day, that's probably all you need, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to think, in terms of other things. I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned about the automatic gun, and I was trying to figure out if this movie came out before or after the finale to Breaking Bad, which uses a similar kind of device, not the the laser sight, but it uses like an automatic weapon that's attached to a remote control that's going off. I wonder because Vince Gilligan, who made Breaking Bad, he liked a lot of B movies, and he would pull actors for them. I mean, Norbert Weiser, who's like or Weiser, I don't know, was a Albert Pyun mainstay, did 15 Albert Pyun movies. He has a reoccurring part in a couple different scenes in the movie. It's Jonathan Banks, who is the guy who infamously got thrown over a buffet in Beverly Hills Cop. It's like, those kind of actors. I don't know. I feel like I couldn't put it past Vince Gilligan to be watching this movie and being like, that's an interesting idea. When he's thinking about the finale for the movie, or for the TV show.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that, but no, you're exactly right.
Yeah. Now, what was there was another piece. Well, I guess the beginning of the movie as well, because to your point that Adkins is, Adkins is kind of the bigger. His character has kind of a more like a meteor part, I guess you could say. There's more to his character. The movie does start with Van Damme, where he's. I joked when I wrote my review back in 2011 that he was dressed like a hipster, but it's a really cool opening scene with him, and it's funny because there's also, after he kills this guy, his crime boss, while he's at his daughter's wedding, he's escaping through the kitchen, and we think maybe we're going to get a little sudden death action there, but it's not such it's not a full fight. But to that point, I think that might have been the reason why a lot of us were disappointed, because the movie starts off on such a high that it kind of settles into a little bit more of a drama aspect, and becomes less of that opening scene, I guess.
Well, what I really liked about that opening scene was, I think it was showing us that look, I how do I say this? As much as the ending always kind of bothered me, the fact that he takes out this entire room with this remote control machine gun or whatever. I think in the end I always accepted it because that's his character. His character is an efficient. How do I say this? An efficient but also extremely skilled assassin. So yeah, he may not want to be going in for those one-on-one fights or whatever. He's going to get in and out as quickly as possible and get the job done. And so yeah, that's kind of how I justify the end. I know a lot of people were disappointed at the end, but I kind of accepted it that way. And I actually really did kind of like how, he has that knife. He's pretending to be a waiter at the beginning of the movie, right? And so he has that knife that's under the tray that he's holding, and he just uses it like he kind of walks by like he's given some drinks to this one table, and he's just able to just so quickly and efficiently cut the throat of his target and then walk out. You know what I mean? Like, how cool is that? I think that's kind of a cool character trait, which, kind of works to Jean-Claude's strengths at this time, considering he was starting to kind of, I don't want to say give less to his performances, but around this time we kind of got to see what was to come in terms of how little he was tending to want to give in subsequent films, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I think, it's interesting, because, right after this movie, he does some really intense performances, but they're smaller roles, right? Like, I feel like he steals the show in Expendables 2, but then also Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning. It's a small role. Again, Atkins has got the big part, but and maybe this is part of where we don't know if there's tension between him and Atkins, but maybe where I don't know. The interesting thing about Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning is Atkins is the star, but Van Damme is like this really big focal point. He's like the Kurtz, in the Heart of Darkness kind of thing, the Marlon Brando character maybe. And so it's interesting. He's giving like this really intense role in a short burst like that. And then I think one of my favorites, comes 2 years after this in Enemies Closer, where he teams up with John Hyams again and plays such a fun baddie. It's really interesting, like kind of the different roles. It's like if you get him for like a small role, but you make it intense, he'll give something different, I guess, depending on how big the role is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this film kind of shows that while he may have a small role, he's still given a lot to do. Compared to a lot of films nowadays, when they're given small roles, these actors, these I hate using the term geezer, Matt, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to use it. But whereas these older action stars are given a little role, sadly with that small role, they don't really have much to do. Luckily, I think we can agree that everyone is given something to do, especially Jean-Claude, considering his character is a quiet but efficient contract killer. Yes. And I think that's kind of all we need for 2011.
No, I totally agree. And one thing we should point out is that so Van Damme, this movie came out when Van Damme was 51, so he's probably 50 when he was making it. Scott Adkins, I don't know if he's already turned 50 or he's going to be 50 this year, but he was born in 76, so he's closing in on the age Van Damme was when he made this movie. And so in June, he's going to be 50 in June, which is just crazy, because it feels like he's not slowing down at all. But to be fair, I mean, Van Damme did Pound of Flesh, and that was, talking about, being nude in the movie, right? That might be the last time he ever did that, and he was showing off that he could still do the splits and all of that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. It's interesting what it's going to look like for Adkins when he starts hitting this time period that Van Damme's in. I mean, if he's still got it, that's one thing, but is he going to lean into being older the way Van Damme did, kind of from this movie period, from the 2010s on to now?
Well, you look at him on his socials, and he's still giving it his all, as much as his body will allow. So I'd like to think that with a guy like him, he's going to keep doing it until his body and his muscles are telling him no more. I mean, but he's still training, quite a bit. And I will say too, I'd like to think that Atkins will still be doing that as he approaches, the elder years or whatever. Mainly because if you think about it, guys like Van Damme, Steven Seagal, and everything, they had a taste of what it was like in Hollywood, working for these huge big budget productions, to suddenly they're going into the world of direct to video. You know what I mean? So of course, I don't want to mitigate it or anything, or throw shade at them, but I mean, it has to be a real blow to one's ego to go from one film that was going from films that were being made for between 35 to 50 million to suddenly going to a film that's being made for barely 3 million or whatever, where you're only on set for a few days. Well, of course, you're not going to put in your best effort in something like that. And I think that's kind of what's afflicted guys like Van Damme, and definitely Steven Seagal. But I feel like the difference with Scott Adkins is, I mean, if you think about it, Matt, he's always been in that direct-to-video world. You know what I mean? He had a taste of Hollywood where he was like a small supporting character in Hollywood films. He did a movie called Criminal with Kevin Costner, and then the Doctor Strange movie, he did that. But I mean, those were real bit roles. I think he knows his bread and butter is the DTV realm. That's where he's been. That's where he's gonna stay. That's where he thrives. So I think as long as he's there and as long as he's taking the lead, he's always gonna be doing his physicality as much as he'll allow.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think you're right there too. I think, but again, it's going to be interesting because this is the arc that all of these actors go through, and Atkins is hitting it now. It's kind of crazy to think, but I mean, you look at his stuff. I mean, two of his best movies. I haven't seen Prisoner of War yet, but a lot of people really like that one. But Diablo for me is
great.
Yeah, I mean, I think after Avengement, I've got Diablo as my second favorite of his movies. So I mean, for him to have that come out then, I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I guess yes, Expendables 2 for Van Damme was a huge, for me at least, that he did a great job there. So maybe that's a movie that and that would have been, he did that after he was in his 50s. He was 51, 52 for that movie. So maybe that's, that movie. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fascinating. And the other thing that's fascinating too is that we don't really have anybody else that's Adkins' age that's doing this kind of stuff, right? We've got, Michael Jai White, Mark Dacascos, who were born in the mid to late 60s. So they're, not that much younger than Van Damme. Gary Daniels, same thing. Where it's Adkins really is the only one born in like the mid to late 70s like that who's doing these kinds of movies. So it's also going to be interesting to see because I think he was used to being the one who did the heavy lifting when they would have some of those geezer names added to the movies.
Yeah, no, but I think as we look at this particular film, I think it really was a great kind of look at me type film. I mean, Scott Adkins had done, I think by this time, he had done the Ninja movie. I mean, so he already had kind of a stamp in the world of direct-to-video. But I feel like this really is a wonderful look at me type film, as kind of showing him as being the next action star. And I mean, and it's not Jean-Claude in his prime, but I think he's still delivering something that is pretty cool to watch on screen, and I mean, they have a great presence, you know what I mean, the two of them, they have a great presence on screen, and they have a wonderful chemistry, the two of them. So yeah, like I said at the beginning, it's not maybe top tier in my favorite of Jean-Claude's wheelhouse, but I mean, it could be so much worse. And I wish back then I had given it a better shake. But then again, I mean, we didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know back then that what things were going to look like. But yeah, no, I highly enjoyed this one, and I love the fact that you invited me on for this one.
Yes, no, absolutely, and hopefully, in the coming months, we'll have you back on for the other two of these Barbarash movies, because I think it's they're kind of fascinating watching them now. I don't know what you think, but I think this kind of what we've been talking about is that it's interesting watching them in 2025, knowing what the market became compared to what it was when Barbarash was making these with Sony Pictures money, and it's like you said, we didn't know what we had at the time that compared to what we're going to have now.
Yeah, no. We should probably also say that there is still one. I mean, we talked about how Jean-Claude is kind of in this, semi-retirement, if you will. But he does have a film that has been, oh my gosh, it's been in the can for, hard to believe, but almost 20 years now at this point. But he did a movie called Full Love. It's had a number of different titles. It's been known as Full Love. It's been called Soldiers. It's been called The Eagle Path.
Right.
I think it was even toyed with the name Frenchie for a period. But this is a film that Jean-Claude wrote, directed, and stars in. I don't know what the reason is and why it hasn't been released. Who knows if it's ever going to be released, but it'll be really interesting. Assuming it does get released, it'll be wild to watch it, considering, I mean, it's kind of this lost film, but it'll be crazy seeing it and watching a Van Damme who's 20 years younger for the first time. You know what I mean? I have faith that one day I'll get to see it, but man, it's just wild to me to think that there is a lost, buried Van Damme film that is still underground somewhere.
Yeah, it's amazing because according to the critic reviews, or sorry, not the critic, according to the trivia, I guess he screened it at Cannes in 2010, and the reviews were bad, so he was trying to rework it, and then that was it. It disappeared. But when I think of how many movies, like how many Albert Pyun movies were reshot or remade by the distributors or whatever because they didn't like them, or like the Seagal movie Attack Force that was completely redone. It is interesting. I think Van Damme could put the movie out and make money, but it is amazing that he knows he could probably make money off the movie even if it isn't great. But he's keeping it because he wants it to be a certain quality. I guess it goes back to what we were saying, But I think for us as fans, it would be interesting just to see it and, understand what it went through. So we're not we wouldn't judge him for it if it's really bad, I guess. But, he must think it would tarnish his reputation if that movie came out in that bad of quality that, it got panned at Cannes.
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, we talked about it. It's kind of going full circle, but he has a brand to protect. And maybe, I mean, I've seen the trailer for it, and it doesn't look that bad. I mean, just judging by the 2-minute trailer, it looks pretty cool. So, I mean, if he's thinking it's bad, then it must be something else. But then again, I can't imagine that it's any worse than some of the other stuff that we've seen. Honestly, I've been saying this for a while. Honestly, what I think he should do, and I think he would make quite a, I think we talked about it on the last time we chatted, but he's on Cameo, and he did like a, I don't think it's active anymore, but he did a thing called Van Damme Talk, where you could schedule a phone call with him and talk to him or whatever. He was charging money for that. Honestly, what I think he should do is, look, he still has a fan base, obviously. I think he should put this out for the fans. If he wants to make money and he owns the film, then I think he should release it to his website. And, if you want to watch it or whatever, you pay the $19.99 or $24.99 or whatever, and you can stream it that way. And then that way, 100% of the money goes to him or whatever. I know I personally would love to see it and would gladly pay. But I feel like at this point, look, he's not going to be able to show it at Cannes. I don't even think Cannes is even really a thing anymore, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I don't understand why he just doesn't do that. I mean, he could even, he could even tour it. I remember Kevin Smith did that with one of his films. And I'm not putting Van Damme and Kevin Smith in the same echelon by any means. but I remember when he had trouble finding distribution for a film, he toured it and brought it to to cities around the U.S. or whatever, and then would do a Q&A afterwards and everything. I mean, you can't argue. I mean, I guarantee you, he had to make more money doing it that way than if he sold it to a distributor. The problem with that is, and I don't want to go down this road because I know we're kind of wrapping up, but I feel like Jean-Claude, he doesn't do the best with interviews, and it seems like sometimes he's on a different planet than I think we'd like him to be. So who knows how he would do it at Q&A. I don't think that would go over too successfully, but I think he should put it on his website or whatever. $25.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think he'd be surprised how many would check it out.
Yeah, or even if he did like 15 to stream, 25 for the Blu-ray, I think, or 30 for the Blu-ray, hell, and 20 to stream. I think he it's better than 0, I think, but I think he would like you said, I think he would do well. And then, if he wanted to sell it to, like set up a deal with Tubi after the fact to, add commercials and stream it on there. Like you said, there's enough of us that would, I mean, if 2,000 of us paid $20, he'd have $40,000, and that's just for doing nothing other than putting a movie out that he, so yeah, who knows? Yeah, it would be nice to see it though.
In any case, I think one day we'll probably see it, and it'll be one of those things that'll just kind of pop up almost like a phantom on YouTube or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna have the most flashy rollout that we would like, but. Yeah. Hey, it's better than nothing. But but then again, I think maybe he looks at it and maybe he's embarrassed of the product and he's thinking, you know what, I'd rather my fans remember me as the guy from Bloodsport. So maybe that's why he is selling his likeness as Bloodsport on Mortal Kombat and doing things of that nature too. Again, it helps protect the brand. You know what I mean?
No, that makes a lot of sense too. So maybe that's just what it is. So maybe, or maybe when he passes, maybe his kids will release it, if, that's a possibility too. But we don't think about him passing. He's only 60 now. So, 65. But anyway, but yeah, Sean, as we're wrapping up, anything else that you wanted to say about this movie or anything else that you wanted to mention?
No. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I do appreciate the opportunity. The next Jean-Claude film, whatever that is, I'm looking forward to it. But you picked a good one today, man. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you as well for coming on. It was one of those ones that after I watched it, I was really shocked at what my review was on it. I was like, I really didn't like this, huh? That's interesting because I really liked it now. So
yeah, no, it could have been much worse, and in the end, it's actually a pretty cool flick. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you again for coming on, Sean. This was a ton of fun, and thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.
Direct to video.